Hey everyone, and Happy New Year. I'm Seth Jones here live at the Visual Arts Academy and Studio, and joining me as usual is our instructor and master draftsman, Chad Nuss. We're excited to be back live again after the new year. Chad, it feels like we've been away forever, but it's really only been a few days, but it's really nice to be back. What do you think, bud?
Yeah, I mean, it's been since last year that we got on here. That's such a dad joke. It's such a dad joke.
Nothing like the dad jokes, man. It's awesome.
You're welcome. Yeah.
No, thank you. Guys, we are so glad to be here. We are also very, very happy to announce that we will be going live moving forward in January and February and hopefully on into the future. We're going to be doing these live sessions every Saturday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. And so if you want to get it on your calendar, put it on your calendar, give us a like, subscribe, a share, follow us on your favorite, watch live on your favorite channels. We're streaming to Facebook Live, Instagram Live, YouTube, as well as Twitch. So get on your favorite platform, give us a like, follow, and a share, and then join us every Saturday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. We love it when you get to create with us, when you ask questions, engage. We're here to share any kind of information that we possibly can and get you guys excited about creating. One of the goals of the Visual Arts Academy and Studio is to share as much knowledge as we can with you all as creators, but then to also get you creating as well. So we're hoping that you guys can join us from all of the different locations from all around the globe. We've been so unbelievably surprised, Chad, with everybody that's joined us and been a part of this. We're so grateful for everything that you guys do. And we're excited today because Chad's going to be working on a drawing. Again, I'll let him kind of describe that. And today what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to put my first wash on my oil painting here of my second painting that I've got going on. It's a 30 by 40. I'm going to put this wash on, and then I'm going to walk through and explain it to you guys, and then I'm going to switch back over to my oil painting. But Chad, what are you working on today? What are you going to be talking through for us?
Well, I'm back at my apocalyptic landscape. This is about 6 foot by 3.5 foot drawing, and I'm using charcoal right now. I started with pencil, and now in these kind of larger areas, the darker areas, I'm using charcoal. So I'm using vine charcoal, which is these little sticks here, and charcoal pencil. And then I'm also using blending stuff here. And then I've also got a paintbrush, which is really nice for the vine charcoal because it gives it really nice, soft gradation, I guess you could say, real smooth transition for dark and texture and that kind of thing. So, and then also my fingers. So that's always nice. But yeah, so
nothing like some good finger smudging, huh? Nothing like getting in there with that and charcoal and smudging around, getting your hands all dirty.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, so that's what I'm working on. I'll probably do the majority of this in charcoal. And we were talking a little bit before we started our live how much I love charcoal. Like I remember seeing a video. These chefs were talking. I worked in kitchens for many years, and I've cooked for many years. And I saw this video of these cooks, and they were talking, or the chefs, and they were talking, and one of them was talking about how much he loved duck fat. He loved like cooking duck fat. He loved like frying things in duck fat. How great it tastes, so rich. It's like the fine wine of fats that you can use for cooking. And I feel the same way about charcoal. It was not until this year that I really gotten into charcoal drawing. And I absolutely love charcoal because it, excuse me, it actually does all the effects that I want with pencil, but actually, it's funny to say this, a lot faster and a lot looser. And so for me, my drawings become a little more expressive, a little more loose around the edges. I do like a nice tight drawing, definitely, but there's something about charcoal that just really gives your drawing a lot of personality and really captures more the essence of the drawing rather than the sharp detail, which with charcoal, you can get sharp detail, absolutely, with the pencils and even with the sharp edge on your vine charcoal. But for me, it just loosens me up a lot. And I just love how light you can get it and how smooth. And it's just really a beautiful material to work with, for sure.
That's awesome. Well, I'm so excited to see you paint with charcoal, which I think is interesting because we always talk about you being such a draftsman, but the charcoal allows you to have that looseness and that painterly quality that you and I always talk about, right? You know, being able to have that fluidity to it and loosen it up, which I think is really exciting. So I can't wait to see where this drawing goes in the next 2 hours, Chad. It's always amazing to see how you sculpt on this giant piece of paper. But I guess what I'm going to go ahead and do, guys, is I'm going to go ahead and walk you through the beginning process of what my painting is here. You guys have been watching me work on another large painting that's in oil, and I'm doing the grisaille there. What I'm working on now is I have my underdrawing, and what I've done is I've kind of sealed it a little bit here. I've got this ready to go. It's gessoed canvas. So I have drawn this on gesso canvas just with graphite. I could use charcoal. I could use either one. But what I'm going to be doing is, and I'm going to show you guys, is I'm going to be base coating this or undercoating this with an acrylic wash. And the reason I'm going to do this acrylic wash is it keeps me from working on white. It allows me to have a unified color underneath, and it allows to seal that canvas a little bit so that the oil sits right on top. There's a lot of people that do different methods with this. I'm going to show you kind of what I'm doing with mine. If you remember, if you joined us in some of our previous sessions, my other painting that I'm going to put up here in a second was undercoated in yellow ochre, and I really liked that glow. I wanted the glow of that yellow to kind of shine through my grisaille as well as my oil glazes. And for this one, I'm actually going to be doing a nice raw sienna. I don't know if you guys can kind of see that there. And so I'm going to be using a nice raw sienna, but I'm going to water it down pretty heavily. I've got a giant 2-inch brush, and so I'm using this really nice big 2-inch brush. Again, I've got a large canvas, 30 by 40 inches. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to coat this entire thing in this raw sienna. Some of you may be asking, Chad, you might be thinking, why raw sienna for this painting? I picked this raw sienna because I wanted a nice earthy tone. This painting is going to be in a very limited color palette, a very muted color palette, and this nice raw sienna is really going to add a lot to the flesh. This is a portrait of my daughter as she's sleeping. She always sleeps like a princess. It's amazing to me. I don't know if any of you guys have kids. Most kids don't sleep like they're princesses. My daughter actually does. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it this nice reddish undertone that will really shine through all these oil layers, make it really have a nice flesh tone and a flesh texture to it, and really kind of unify that whole palette. So please ask questions. We're so glad you're here. Like, share, follow. Give us a little bit of information. Give us what you've got. Let us know that you're involved. Ask us questions. We love sharing information with you all. And Chad, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go full screen here on this second camera. And I'm going to go ahead and show you guys this, what I'm going to do here with this layout. Now, I've got a nice healthy dose of my acrylic here, and I've already layered in a lot of water. My brush is already wet, but what you'll find is when I take some of this acrylic, now again, this is acrylic. Some people go, well, can you use acrylics as, you know, as an undercoat for oils? Absolutely, you can. You typically don't want to go the other way around. You typically don't want to put oils on top unless it's entirely dry, but even then, it's not quite as safe. But what we've got is I'm going to go ahead and go in. Now watch, I'm going to put this in, and some of you may go, oh my gosh, it's covering up your graphite, and that's okay. All I need is a nice little undertone. I'm just tinting my canvas. That way I'm not working from white, and I'm going to put this on. Now you're going to see that I'm going to work relatively fast with this. Acrylic, as we know, acrylic dries very, very fast. So I've got some water here. I can even spray. I'll show you different techniques. I can even spray directly onto the canvas, move some of this around. You'll see other artists, they'll like spray and let it drip and create these beautiful textures underneath. I don't know if you guys can kind of see how that's running. Look at that. But really, for my purposes, what I want to do is I want to add enough color here that I get this nice unifying pigment. And so I'm going to work this out, and I'm just going to place this here and just keep spreading this around. And again, acrylic is plastic-based, so it creates this nice layer. It almost kind of seals it. Creates this nice, beautiful layer. And also, too, for me, I like a little bit smoother of a canvas when I work, when I paint. And so this coats it and really gets into the ridges of that canvas and allows for the oil paint in the next stage to really sit on top there. But isn't this raw sienna just a beautiful color, guys? I mean, it is. I hope you can understand the concept of what we're looking at of adding this undertone that's going to unify the entire piece, because it really helps. A lot of people do start straight on white. That's fine. That's okay. They can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think when you start from white, it really kind of messes up your values, especially when you're trying to paint and color mix either acrylics, watercolors, or anything like that. Well, watercolor, you can't really start on a tinted ground unless you have a tinted paper. But especially for my oil painting, I don't like to paint on white. Does that kind of make sense, Chad, or do you think I'm getting a little too wild there on that?
No, it's great. I was actually going to ask you, how do you select which color you're going to use for your base? Do you always use colors, or could you use other colors?
You can use any color you want. There are some artists who have started going into these really vibrant neon pigments. You'll see that like if you're doing like street lights or cityscapes, those neons really work, Chad, right? Those neon underpaintings really make it glow like street lights or rain, or if you're looking for anything like that. I typically try to be conscious of what colors I'm using for the effect that I'm trying to go for, if that makes sense. And so with the Cora painting, the other painting with the yellow ochre, I wanted that inner glow, right? Because the goal of the painting is to showcase that movement from adolescence into, young child into adolescence into teenage years, and really having that confidence and that self-awareness. So a yellow ochre is going to make it glow, really kind of give it this underlying brightness, if you will. Whereas with this painting that I'm putting this on, it should be a little bit more earthy. Does that make sense? And so I didn't want to go with something neon. I didn't want to go with something too bright and too vibrant. But this nice raw sienna red is just going to pull everything together, really make it nice and earthy, really pull it in. And you'll see other artists, they'll use, the old masters used to use like a vermilion green because they wanted to get that undertone of the flesh, the blood, the blue coming through the flesh tones. I typically have always used yellow ochre, but I've seen everything from neon pinks to raw umbers to reds. It's just really a matter of what you're trying to do. Now, and I know I'm rambling here, but it's a good question, Chad, is I think some people can just kind of arbitrarily throw a color on, right? They can just kind of pick one and just kind of go, boom, there it is. I like the idea of being a little bit more conscious about why you're using that underpainting, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's great. Yep.
I know that was a bit of a, but thanks for listening through that.
No, it's great. As we've talked many times before. Like, I'm more on the drawing side. You've done a lot of paintings, especially here recently, so I don't have as much experience. So it's great to hear your process as far as the underpainting, doing the layers and everything like that. So it's really interesting to hear. Everything is really intentional. There's a meaning behind why you picked the colors you did, those kind of things. So just for me, when I think, if I were to sit down and paint something, picking that first layer, like you're doing right now, really requires a familiarity with color theory and just trying to figure out, how is this underpainting going to affect the colors that I'm on top of it? Because reality is that most people probably think, if you haven't painted a whole lot or color, but they change and shift depending on what color they're next to. I think for me, that's the most intimidating part about color. It's just the lack of experience of seeing how colors change when you put them together. And I think we referenced in another live stream, but I remember seeing a close-up of one of Rembrandt's paintings, and he used like this really wild, like green color, but because it was surrounded by so many other colors, it came through as like a muted gray almost, or I forget exactly what it looked like, but it looked so real. But you would never know unless you were really familiar with color theory to use that green up front. You would think, I just need to mix the gray and use gray. But he was so masterful with color that he was able to use colors that you would never think that would turn into other colors. It's like when you did the exploration class, and I was in there just like sitting in and learning from you. You talked about using a yellow and I forget what you add to it, maybe a little bit of black, and it turns green. I'd never thought that, and so it's just interesting how color works in that way. I remember seeing a video of, I think his name is Joseph Albers from V.A.A.S school, and he was very famous for teaching color theory. He has a whole book that I plan on getting at some point where he does all these squares, and all the squares are in different like color combinations. And it's just interesting to see how each color shifts as you depend on the environment. So I think that's really good what you said about choosing your base color based on what you want to do with your final painting. Sure.
Absolutely. And Chad, I want to kind of go back to that, but while this is still wet, I've got to jump in here to show you guys what I'm doing now. So what I'm doing now is while this is still wet, I can actually pull out some of this pigment where I know some of my lighter values are. So even while you're doing just this base tone, right, on my canvas, I can come in and work areas, kind of do like a negative drawing, right, Chad? Kind of do a negative drawing of pulling out certain areas that I know are going to be highlights or they don't need as much pigment on there. And so this helps already form, it starts creating value in your painting as you work through it. And so, you know, I know that this forehead of hers is going to be really bright, and I'm pulling that out on the nose, on the ridgeline, some on the cheeks. I know this top part of the hand is going to be a little bit brighter, and the forearm all the way down. And if I want to, because it's acrylic, I can even just spray a little bit of water on here, and I can pull some of that out. And so instead of just doing a straight wash, I can actually start creating some value. I can start creating some notes. You guys, if you've listened to us before, you know, you should know that I'm all about creating notes as I work, right? Leaving myself little tidbits of information that help me better as I progress through the painting. And so even on this, I can go ahead and come on in and start pulling out some value, start creating some areas of interest. I can also, something that you and I talk about quite a bit, but we haven't really on this live stream, is the highest point of contrast is something I think about on every piece of artwork. Where is the highest point of contrast? Because I know that is going to instantly draw the human eye to it, right, Chad? That if that makes sense. And so I always try to think, where is that point at? Is it on the rule of thirds? Is it in the golden ratio? Where am I looking, and where is that high point of contrast going to be? And so I like thinking that through earlier in the stages. It doesn't mean it has to be that way. It doesn't mean it has to stay there. But I like having a concept and an idea. And if I've planned out, you know, some people plan vigorously, right, Chad? Some people plan, they just kind of dive in and they go for it. And I think both ways are very acceptable. But I like to have a little bit of an idea of, okay, where am I coming from, or where am I going to with this highest point of contrast? And I think that helps me work through a lot of different ideas and concepts, especially when you're talking about that color theory component, right, Chad? It allows me to think through and go, okay, this is where I'm adding some of that color. This is where that value has to be, et cetera, et cetera. But that, I just wanted to showcase that, guys, because and you can actually see it already, I think, on screen, where there's already some form taking shape just by doing this base coat and pulling out some of that pigment.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I know that's just the underpainting, but I love all that. It's very fluid. There's a lot of expression and character in it, and yeah, it's great.
So sometimes I hate painting over it, honestly. Sometimes I love the monochromatic look, and sometimes I'm like, oh man, there's so much energy there. There's so much that just kind of naturally happens, right? You can't really plan on it. And sometimes like, oh man, I really hate to paint over this. But one of the things I might do, and I'm scared to do it, is to loosen up and do an entire painting kind of in this process. Thomas has challenged me many times to perhaps not be so tight. You know, you were talking about how charcoal has loosened you up. Using bigger brushes and working in this manner helps loosen me up. And I think as I progress as a painter, because I think I shared with you, I still don't know if I classify myself as a painter. But as I get more and more into painting and doing more works in this fashion, I think I do need to loosen up. I think that the painting is going to be a lot more interesting, and I think it's going to be a lot more sensitive to me, if you will, to my own aesthetics. And so I've got to work on that. Definitely a point of growth for me.
Yeah, I'm kind of wrestling with that myself, because I'm sitting here playing with this charcoal down here in this drawing, thinking, I really like this kind of fluid, loose, but I just don't want it to be distracting from the rest of it. That's so, like, the up and left are very tight and defined. And I'm kind of liking this real, like, fluid style. So I'll kind of see how this goes. I'm the same place as you. The kind of art that I really like is usually not the tight illustration kind. I mean, I do like some of that, obviously. I mean, it's what I studied, and I do plenty of that myself. But I typically gravitate towards more expressive kinds of art or painting style or drawing style. So it is an interesting little internal battle going on, I think, in my mind, and from what you're saying as well with you. So it's really cool.
Absolutely. I think it is a constant challenge, right? Everybody, thank you guys so much for working and joining with us today. Hopefully you've got a sketchbook out, or you're working on a painting of your own. Chad's working on his large format drawing over here, his apocalyptic scene. and I am doing a base wash or underpainting, if you will. And I'm working through a little bit of this, and then I'm going to switch back over to my other piece. But let us know you're here. Give us a shout out. We'll make sure that you're known. We love that you've joined us today. Thanks for joining us. Here in Louisville, Kentucky, we got some weather coming through. I think out west you guys had some recently, but we're so excited to be painting and drawing with you guys today. Thanks for joining us.
So once that underpainting, is that what you call that, underpainting, that first layer? What would you call it?
Well, and I'm trying to think of the actual terminology on it, which is embarrassing because I can't think of it right now. But there is a technical term for it, and I apologize everybody that I'm blanking on it. I'll get that to you guys. But essentially, once this dries, I have two choices, right? I can either go in with very opaque paint, kind of a la Prima style, and go ahead and paint my colors, my pigments, my chroma straight onto this. Or I can go through the grisaille process again, which is the grayscale. And so I haven't decided if I'm going to do the grayscale, kind of like I did on the Cora piece, or if I'm going to move straight into the actual chroma. But yeah, after this dries, you're pretty much set. You can go ahead and start painting any way that you want with your chroma or whatever else that you might have. But I'm really excited about this. I may work on this just another moment or two, add in some darker values here or there with this raw sienna, which I think is absolutely gorgeous. It's going to work perfectly for what we're trying to achieve. And then I'm going to switch over to my other painting. But I want to find this term because I apologize, I'm blanking on it.
I think you should do it a la Prima style. Then that way you've got two paintings going in two different techniques.
Yeah, absolutely.
The different ways that you can do that.
For all of those that are wondering, the technical term is imprimatura. And so that's the technical term for what I just did, which is we kind of just call it an underpainting, right? But this is technically an imprimatura, 30 inches by 40 inches on gessoed canvas. I had my underdrawing down. I have it poking through. You can kind of see it if you see it really closely. I think this is going to be a phenomenal piece. And Chad, I love your idea, working on the two different styles. I've done the full-blown grisaille, as well as this one's going to be more a la Prima. And I tend to resonate with a la Prima more, guys, because I like to work faster, and that allows me to work a little bit faster on that. But hopefully you guys can kind of see what we're working on here. I'm going to add in a little bit more darker tones. Thank you guys so much for joining us today here at the Visual Arts Academy and Studio. Let us know you're here. Give us a like, subscribe, a share, or ask us some questions. We love to share our knowledge. We love to coach you guys up as much as we can. Let us know how everything's going for you guys today on this wonderful Saturday evening. And then also, too, don't forget, from now on, Chad and I and other team members, we're going to be doing these every Saturday from 6 to 8. So hopefully you guys can add us to your calendar, join us on a regular basis, and build this community that we're so excited to be a part of.
For that painting that you're working on right now, what do you think for you? If you chose the a la Prima and you were about to start it, where would you start? What would be the first thing you would do?
So I typically, especially with oils, I like to start with my darks first. I like to start with the darkest darks, and then I kind of will emphasize that highest point of contrast, Chad, like we talked about, right? So what you're going to see in this painting, it's really interesting because down here at the bottom, where I'm adding in this value now, it's actually a very black comforter. It's a very dark, kind of like a dark brown, but it's going to read as black. So this is going to be a very dark section, and you're going to look at me. I'm going to add this in really heavy right here so you guys can kind of see. This whole section here is going to be a very dark value, and what's naturally going to happen is this big mass of black is going to draw your eye in, because large clumps of color, right, Chad, draw our attention in, and it's going to be a big, giant black section. So what I don't want to have happen is I don't want to have the human eye immediately go down to the bottom right. I don't want to go all the way down to this bottom right, because if you do, we as Westerners read top to bottom, left to right. So we kind of naturally end at the bottom right of a canvas, right? We kind of naturally kind of end there. And so this black section is going to do two things for me. Okay, guys, bear with me. And some of this is theoretical, but I believe it works 100%. And Chad, I know you talk about framing devices and all that kind of stuff, right? A lot of implied line. So this giant black mass in the bottom right is going to carry a lot of weight, and it's going to stop. If you look at this, it's going to stop my viewer, right? It's going to hold them in. But what I really want is this nice high point of contrast. If you guys look right here, this nice crest of this eye and the crest of the nose with the forehead, because it's going to be very dark back here. She's going to be sleeping on this pillow. So I know that a very interesting section, Chad, is this highest point of contrast right where you're seeing me work right now, right where this crest of the nose is, right with this back shadow. So what I'm hoping is that by having this in a centralized focus, right, it's centered in the piece, this whole contrast will outweigh this giant black mass. Does that make sense, everybody? I hope that's helping. Give me a like and comment if that's making sense. Chad, does that make sense?
Yeah, it looks great. Yeah, exactly what you're saying about, especially I can see through the video here that there's almost like a vertical on the right where that mass of dark is. That stops your eye from continuing over, just like you said. And yeah, exactly. Like we talk about it in our classes about using leading lines and framing, that kind of thing. And that usually shows up in very intuitive ways. Like in other words, you're not going to literally put a box where you want someone to focus. You're not going to literally put lines. I mean, you might. I mean, if it's more abstract, but or even I don't know. You could. Either way, what I'm trying to say is typically they show up kind of subtly. You know, the way someone will use a line in architecture or a line of trees or, you know, whatever it is to lead your eye around the paper. So I love it. I love what you're saying.
Well, and I love me personally. I love when it's a choice, a chosen compositional element, right? When you've made your good, because design is really important. And we've got a comment here. I'm going to shout out to Chrissy. Chrissy, thank you so much for joining us today. You're a phenomenal artist in your own right and a phenomenal student. We're so excited that you joined us live today. Thanks for being here. And thank you for the wonderful compliment, by the way. I'm glad that it's informative for you. And I'm glad you're enjoying these live streams. We can't thank everybody enough for joining us today. Chad, I'm going to go back to you. Said, what would I work on from this point? So from this point, I'm going to put in my darkest darks. And then I'm going to highlight some of my lightest lights. And then from there, I'll start picking elements of emphasis that I know I probably want tighter. And then I tend to work more loose, if that makes sense. So I'll probably work right here on the crest of the nose, the eye, this dark versus the light, creating that really nice contrast, creating that shading, that vibrating element, if you will, for the human eye. And then I'll start kind of working out around. One of the things that you and I have talked about on some of our previous live streams, and if you guys can go back and watch some of those, Chad and I are really trying to force ourselves to work around a piece. And what that means is not focusing, because he and I are guilty of this, and I think it's okay. It's okay if you work like this. But we're guilty of just hyper fixating on one section, and we're both left-handed, so we tend to work right to left, right? So we don't smudge. Any lefties out there, show your love. You probably know exactly what we're talking about. But we finish a piece, and then we work all the way down. And as I instruct our students, and I coach myself up as well, is a lot of times you wear out. You get tired by the time you transition to that other section, or you don't use the same techniques exactly. So bouncing around from one section of the painting to the next section allows for a more unified work. Not always, and that's okay if you work differently, but I try to encourage students to challenge themselves to work on one section, move to the next, and the next, and the next, so on and so forth. And I think that helps a lot. So hopefully you guys are taking a look at this. I hope you guys can see this underpainting here or imprimatura. I've really gone in. I've put in some darker values, some lighter values. I've done some paint pulling, which basically means I took a wet paper towel, pulled up some of this paint to leave some of these wider, lighter areas to go ahead and start sculpting this painting. Even on the first layer, I'm trying to sculpt this painting in three-dimensional form. So, Chad, I'm going to stop talking for a second, and I'm going to switch out the other painting and give you the floor, good sir.
Okay. Well, I am dealing with a lot of the same things that you were just talking about, especially working over an entire picture. Yeah, I'm the same. My usual way of doing things is go in one area, finish it, move on to the next area. But one of the things I'm running into with such a large drawing here is I really need to make sure every section of the picture is balanced. So that would require me to be involved in every aspect of this whole entire picture. So if I just focus on one too much, the downside of that is the tones might look beautiful in that section of the drawing, but then I go into another section and maybe that's a bit darker. It might throw off the tones of the first section that I worked on. So that's kind of a situation I'm dealing with right now. Just think about the lighting of, like, for example, this mountain that I'm working on. This is a bit in the background, a bit further back behind this other mountain range that I didn't quite finish, but I've really worked in. And so I want it to be a bit lighter because of atmospheric perspective. Usually when things back to the picture plane, they get a bit lighter, a bit softer. You lose some of the detail just to really give that illusion of depth. But the situation with this picture is this mountain is actually going to be overshadowed by very dark storm clouds. So that will actually make this mountain darker. And so naturally what you would do is make it lighter because of what I just said. But because of the lighting of the picture, it's going to be a bit different. So what I'm doing right now is just putting in a very light kind of almost a silhouette, some textural things that I'm doing with this, but it's almost like a silhouetted mountain. Once I get my tone down into this valley, kind of very similar to what I've done already, then I'm going to start in with the clouds above it. And that will help really establish what the tones will look like in this area. What I've got here is a big valley. And so this mountain range is coming down and leveling out. And I've got another mountain that's going to cut down into this area. So I've got this little valley coming in right here. I've got a mountain here. I've got a third mountain range kind of back behind that, which will be even lighter than that. And I'm possibly going to put some light tones in this area that are going to shine through the mountains. So what that means is then this mountain or this valley area here in the front is going to catch some of that light. I don't want it to be completely silhouetted out, completely blackened out. But I do want it to be darker because the other thing I'm thinking about is composition. And so towards the bottom, there's going to be, and you can't see it's off camera, but towards the bottom, there's going to be some figures down there that are going to be silhouetted of kind of a lighter area haloed around them. But I'm going to establish that contrast is make it dark in that area as well. And so I'm trying to balance like where all these darks and lights are coming from. In order to do that, I really have to work on the picture as a whole. So what I'm doing right now is just going in, getting some initial kind of textures and tones without putting the finishing touches. And then once I get that done for the whole thing, then I'll go back in and start tightening it up and making it really look nice and tight. So, and as we discussed before, now that I've switched over to charcoal, the other thing I have to decide is how tight do I want it? Do I want it to be like almost hyper realistic, or do I want it to be a little expressive, a little bit looser? I'm kind of leaning more towards a bit looser, kind of the kind of picture where when you step back from it, it looks very defined and detailed, but then when you get up close, you see there's a lot of pencil marks and charcoal scratching and all that kind of stuff. So I like that. I'm leaning towards doing that, but I won't really answer those questions till I have more of this kind of worked out.
Well, and I like the fact that you're processing that as you work, right? That I think that's incredibly helpful to hear, because I think a lot of non-artists or people that are beginning out, they think, oh my gosh, I got to have the whole painting plan. I got to have the whole drawing planned, and I have to have everything figured out, or else, we get what's called blank page syndrome. I don't want to start because I don't have it all figured out. I don't have it perfect. And I love hearing that you're kind of organically letting this kind of come to you, if that makes sense, right? You have a plan. I know you have a plan, but you're letting the drawing come to you. And I think that's really an interesting concept, Chad. Do you think that's kind of what you're working through? I mean, kind of letting it breathe on its own, or how do you articulate that to somebody who's just figuring it out, just kind of getting into it?
Yeah, absolutely. I have an overall plan, and I've very lightly sketched out a few things. But each section, as I'm working on it, you just kind of play around with it and try some different things to see what works, what looks good. And so I had in my mind where I want the light source to come from. But as far as like all the smaller details, those you kind of work on, they kind of emerge as you're working on it. Now, for someone that doesn't draw a whole lot, that sounds terrifying. And honestly, right, even as someone that's drawn for 30 years, that's still a bit terrifying, because you're looking at it and you think, you put all these hours of work into this. What if all of a sudden you get to a spot and it just doesn't go the way you had planned? You ruin the thing, or it feels like you've ruined it. But that's where we go back to that discussion before about what is a mistake? I mean, is it a mistake? Most everything you can fix. There are a few exceptions to that. You know, if you're working in ink and you do a line that you didn't like, well, if you're showing the original, you may have messed it up. You can use some whiteout, but sometimes whiteout doesn't exactly work. It just highlights the mistake. Now with digital things, you can scan it in and fix it. But if we're talking original artwork, it is a terrifying to think, you know, you put all this work into it and then you do something that screws it up. I mean, that is a reality. But you've got to have a lot of grace with yourself. And like everyone makes mistakes, and you can fix probably about 90% of the mistakes you're going to make. And the only way, I would argue, the only way that you grow as an artist is by making mistakes and figuring out how to recover from a mistake. I think for me, especially these live videos, that's really helped give me the freedom and the confidence to draw in front of others. It's, you know, before you think, well, I would never draw in front of someone because I wouldn't want them to see something that didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. That's a very real fear. And I think where that's coming from is, and I don't want to sound harsh because I say this to myself, where that's coming from is a desire for approval from other people. You want this thing to be good. You want to wow other people. But the reality is, I think most people would want to see your mistakes. They want to see you work through, okay, this isn't really going the way I thought it would. This is real. I don't really like this part. What do I do? Because I would say 99% of artists are running into the same problem.
Yep.
They get into a part in their picture where they're like, man, I don't even know how to recover from this. But that's part of the process. Part of it is, struggling through that. So, yeah, it was a long answer just to say that I don't even remember what the original question was.
No, letting the drawing come to you, right? Like letting it let it come to you. And I think that's great. I want to give a shout out to Patsy. Patsy, thanks for joining us. Happy New Year to you as well. We're so glad that you're joining us today on this live stream. We really appreciate all the support, the love, and the kindness, and the positive energy. We hope that you guys are creating with us. Hopefully you got a sketchbook out, or you got a painting that you're working on. But please feel free to ask us questions as we work through these projects. Chad and I love sharing this information here at the Visual Arts Academy and Studio. We know that a lot of you guys are local, and if you're local, stop by, come and see us. But if you're not local, these live sessions are a great way, and Chad and I are so excited to be a part of this with you guys, to share our energy and our excitement with you all. We can't thank you enough for being a part of this community that's continuing to grow, and we're so excited. In case you're interested, there's still time to register for our 8-week sessions that start January 6th. That's this coming Monday. We also have our 4-week Intro to Art sessions as well. We're so excited to be sharing our knowledge and our expertise with you guys. And we're still learning. You know, my favorite saying, if I don't know, actually, Chad, if I've said this on here or not, my favorite saying is it's sometimes attributed to Michelangelo, which is ancora imparo. And I know it, we've already talked about my butchering. I'm from Kentucky, guys. I butcher languages. I'm so sorry. But it's the idea of still I am learning. And I'm very grateful that you, Thomas, and myself, as well as everybody here involved at the Visual Arts Academy and Studio, we are constantly learning and absorbing, not only from each other, but from other artists, from different movements, from history. And we're also learning from our students always. And so we are always learning here. Still, we are learning even here. And we're so glad that we get to learn in these situations with you guys. If you've just joined us, Chad's working on a large, abstract, post-apocalyptic scene here that's beautifully done in charcoal and graphite, large. I think it's like 4 feet by 6 feet. And I'm working on a grisaille, an underpainting here in grayscale on a portrait of my daughter, 30 by 40 on canvas. So thanks for joining us, guys. Ask some questions and fire away. We love getting these questions from you all.
Yeah, I want to pull a little reverse psychology on, because you talk about, coming and signing up for class or coming to visit us and everything. And I always think to myself, if you come and visit us, it's probably going to happen that you'll sign up for a class, because this place is awesome. I know I'm a little biased, but I really do love this place. And even my daughter literally said, we're sitting around the kitchen table, and I've got 4 kids. 2 of my kids come here regularly, and they try to get my other 2 kids to come hang out. And my daughter literally was like, it is the greatest place on earth. I was, what? Are you serious? And she was like serious. Like, she loves hanging out here. And if you're interested in art, or even if you've been an artist for a long time and you step in this place, you'll see what she means, because it really does have that feel. So like right now, as we're filming this, Seth is on the first floor. I'm on the second floor, and I love coming up here on the second floor, especially when there's no one here yet. It's so quiet up here, and there's all the we have the drawing horses, we have drafting tables, we have a still life set up. We have on the other side, there's a whole art show going on, Seth's work of all his paintings. And I love just walking through here and just kind of like meditating and sitting here and just thinking, man, this is such a beautiful place to come and create and to learn. And so I know that's my little pitch for this place, but it's also like my own personal experience of being here. Like I love being here. I love being able to have a place to create. And like you said, as far as learning, we talked a little bit about it when we first got on here live, and even before the live. For me, using charcoal is still a relatively new thing for me. I didn't really get into it, but this year I've really, well, it's a new year now, but last year I really got into it. And yeah, I'm learning all kinds of new things on how to use charcoal in a new and exciting way. So you never stop learning. You know, there's always a new kind of medium you can try. There's, I don't think I've ever done a watercolor painting.
Oh man,
that's something that I could work on. I've done literally one oil painting in my life. So, and that was the one with you during the exploration class.
I'm so honored.
Yeah. So like, there's always something that you can try, some new kind of thing you can do to grow as an artist for sure.
And Chad, thank you for all that, because part of what we wanted to build here at the Academy is an environment. I think COVID changed a lot for a lot of people. And I think, a lot of us realize we love being at home by ourselves, but boy, it's great to have a community, right? And I think we are social beings. Even if we're antisocial at times, we still sometimes like to have that sense of community, right? And like I personally always have to recharge, but I love being surrounded by other artists. I think it's something that I need constantly. I think it's something that motivates me and encourages me to be a better artist. And this place was built and designed to build that community for others. And we want you a part of this community. We want you to be here. We want you to be excited and passionate about the art that you're creating and that others create. And I think that's the whole goal of having such a wonderful space, or at least that is my goal with this and Thomas's goal with this as the co-founders. And it's just a wonderful place to be. And we're so excited. So many people have enjoyed being here, even in these first few months of our opening. So thank you guys for that. I am going to dive into something that's really personal for me here, Chad. And very scary to admit. I have started on the sweater of this painting. And
oh yeah.
If you have joined, or if you're just joining, this sweater has been absolutely terrifying to me because it's a fluted sweater. It has immense texture and immense form to it. And I had constantly been thinking, how the heck am I going to start this? And I'm not going to lie, if you guys can see, I'll spin this camera around. I have pretty much worked on every part of this painting except the sweater. I've done the feet, the face, the background, the door. I've worked on just about every texture imaginable, and I've been putting this off for far too long. And as we were talking, as I worked on the imprimatur for the other painting, if you missed it, I can show it to you guys. I realized that I needed to just focus on form. Create the base form of the sweater, and then go back in with an additional layer to create the fluting, right? To the ribs, the striping of the sweater. And so what I'm working on now, guys, is I'm just going to create this as one simple texture, right? A flat texture, while creating the individual forms of the folds. And then I'll go back in on top and add in that additional layer of the fluting, of the striping of the sweater. So I just went ahead and did it. I just jumped right in, and I'm proud of myself for doing it because it's intimidating and scary. But here we are, and so I'm in it. I hope I don't mess this up. I'm working on this as best I can. But thank you guys for also partially encouraging me by being on with us to dive in and tackle this. So I'm really, I know it may not seem so personal to you guys, but oftentimes for me, it's really hard to admit that I'm scared of something, and especially when it comes to art, because again, we're supposed to be the masters, right? And I think we are very masterful in our trade. Don't get me wrong, Chad. But I'm always learning, and there is an intimidation factor sometimes when you start to figure out, gosh, I'm intimidated by this. Am I going to be able to execute this? Can I do this as well as I hope to? And so that's me sharing my personal kind of weakness with you in this moment. of just being intimidated by this, being kind of terrified of it. I've worked so hard on this, and I love it because it's my daughter. I don't want to mess it up by doing a crappy sweater. So here I am. I'm diving in. And I'm going for it, guys.
Oh, I'm excited to experience that terror with you.
That's so funny. Well, at least you get to see it firsthand, guys.
No, I think that's I think, as I said before, most artists, if they have to be honest, that's what they wrestle with, is that the unknown. And if you're not stepping into the unknown, I would maybe push you a little bit to ask, how are you really growing as an artist? If you just do the same things that you're comfortable with all the time, I don't know how far you can get as an artist. Like, certainly you can get far as like financially or career wise. You can do the same painting 100 times, and everyone's seen those artists online. There's no disrespect to that. People do that, and that's fine. But I think, if you've done the same landscape a million times, like, I would just question, like, what are you going to do when you have to do a portrait? What are you going to do when you have to do architecture or something like that? Like really push yourself to do something you've never done before. And I think the benefit is going to be that you're going to grow in ways that you never thought that you could grow at first.
I agree entirely. And which brings me to this. So here's another confession to all of you guys out there, if you're watching and listening. I take a lot of these video clips, and I think that Chad has immense wisdom that he shares. I think I share some wisdom every now and then on occasion. And we make shorter clips of these and we share them out. Well, we had a comment the other day on YouTube, and I thought it was very interesting. So I'm going to bring it up and I'm going to ask what everybody thinks. And I'd love to get your thoughts on this. So share your thoughts on this, guys. We made a clip talking about, which I thought was brilliant from Chad, where, we talk a lot about making mistakes in art or messing up or being afraid to mess up or doing this or doing that. And what Chad had stated, and I'm paraphrasing here, is essentially the only failure in art is when you give up, is when you stop doing it. And we received a comment on our YouTube channel where basically they said, there is no art unless you give up. And I think that was interesting, right? Because I've wrestled. Boy, I am from Kentucky, guys. That sucker real bad. Nothing wrong with a good accent. It's beautiful. I love it. Keep all that there. I'm proud of it. But I was wrestling with that because I think, obviously they were missing the point of what you stated, but boy, there's some truth in what they stated as well, right? And I thought, philosophically, that's a great comment, right? That's a great comment philosophically is, sometimes you do have to give up the pride, give up the self, give up these other things, right, Chad? Because there is no art if you give those things up. So I think those comments are wonderful, everybody. Please, we love those kind of things. Challenge us, make us think. It's brilliant. And I thought that was an interesting one. Chad, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you said, like, I totally get what this person is saying, and I totally agree. I was more talking about like not painting anymore or not drawing anymore, like actually giving up. But I think to your point, you're exactly right. Like, you're not going to grow as an artist until you give up on that desire for whatever it is that's driving you sometimes. Like, when I think about myself, I mean, there's that thing in the back of your mind where you think, maybe I'll get discovered someday, or maybe, I'll land that big account, someone will commission me to do some kind of big painting or something, and then people know who I am, or maybe I'll get discovered after I die, and my name will be in the history books or whatever, whatever. But that, for me, I think really hinders you as an artist, because you have to die to that. You have to give that up and get to a place where you're just creating out of a love for what you're creating. There's just something, like, I've seen so many videos about this, and I think it's so true. Like, you really can't tell that you're an artist unless it's something you have to do. Like, if you were stranded on a desert island, you had all the time in the world, like, what would be the thing that you would have to do to survive? And if it's not art, then, you might not that might not. Now, I want to be careful here because some people like to draw just as a hobby, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I don't want to discount that. But I think for someone that's like pretty serious about art, I think you've got to get to that point where you give up on trying to make your name great, trying to be like super successful, and just create things that are beautiful for yourself. And the irony of that is that usually if you're doing that, you're going to make art that is true to yourself and art that it resonates with other people. And then you'll find the success that you were looking for. You know what I mean? So like, yes, I agree with the heart of what that person said. I think it's a great compliment or comment that they made. Yeah.
Well, and do you know what else I really enjoy about that, Chad? Which may seem a little strange for people, but I think it's something that has kind of been lost is they said it in a way, and again, I don't know what their intentions are. I don't know this person. I don't know what their full intentions were. Maybe they were trying to be combative and be like, no, you guys are idiots. I don't know. But I really enjoyed the way that they put it because it wasn't aggressive. It wasn't, it was a good conversational comment. You know what I mean? Like it legitimately, it didn't make me feel, I didn't get defensive. I didn't go, oh gosh, this or that. Maybe they were trying. I don't know. But I thought it made me think for the last 3 or 4 days going, man, that's a really nice kind of comment to what we were stating. And I love it. And so I hope you guys do that as well. Like engage in good discourse, right? And engage in good conversation, find ways to connect with others and drive your thought process. Somebody said it to me the other day. They're like, it's like unzipping your mind. Art is like unzipping your mind. And I was like, ooh, that's an interesting way of putting it, right? Like, because you perceive things visually through your eyes, but if you can unzip your mind, you can think through things differently through art than you do in other mediums. And I think that's absolutely amazing. I think it's a brilliant thing. So, don't be afraid to have conversation. Don't be afraid to talk with Chad and I here. Come by and see us, or even here on the live stream. Give us your compliments. And Patsy, if you can't see my cheeks, I am blushing. Thank you so much for that wonderful compliment. You are so kind. I'm blushing like all crazy. I definitely don't deserve it. Thank you. And we're so happy to just be here. It's easy. It's easy to share this passion. It's easy to share the excitement. If you guys take a class of ours, you'll understand that it's the greatest thing in the world when we get to see people grow and succeed as artists and do things that maybe they forgot how to do or didn't think they could do. So we're just honored to be a part of this here and to be here with you all this evening. Thank you guys so much for being here. And if you can't tell, I am definitely the cheerleader. That's pretty much, I think, you guys are amazing. But it's true. I truly do feel that way, and I'm so grateful.
Yeah, I'm more like the dark and brooding storm cloud. Seth has to balance me out a bit. So
it's a good balance.
Yeah.
Well, let us know what you guys think of our work so far. I'm curious to see if you guys haven't seen an update on this painting here. I'm curious to see what you guys think. And Chad's post-apocalyptic, maybe Chad, if you're able to bounce, give us a wider view of that sucker. Maybe I'll give a wide view here in a little bit as well. But thank you guys for jumping on and joining us. We're so happy on this Saturday evening. We personally here in Kentucky and maybe some of the surrounding areas from you guys, we've got some sleet, snow, and ice coming our way. But that's not going to stop us from creating. Not tonight.
Yeah, I'm excited. I hope we get like a foot of snow.
Well, I spent just about 5 years, a little over 5 years in Vail, Colorado, up in the mountains. And so I personally love a nice, good snowstorm. I like the visual of it. I like the feel of it. It's a little different here than it was back out there, but I'm kind of with you, Chad. I enjoy a good snowstorm. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
you guys excited for the snow, or you don't want the snow? What are you all thinking?
I love when the snow is coming down. There's a blanket of snow, and it's at night, and you go outside, and it's so quiet, and the snowflakes are coming down. Oh, I love it. My favorite.
I kid you not. One time when I was living out there, we had a big dump, fresh pow, good nar out there, and for good skiing and snowboarding days. And I was driving a Mini Cooper. Don't laugh. I was driving a Mini Cooper up in the mountains with all the snow. It actually did very, very well, believe it or not. But I came out one morning, and I couldn't find the Mini Cooper because it was completely covered in snow. And immediately grab your board, grab your boots, your gear, and jump on that first chair because you knew it was going to be an amazing day on the mountain. But yeah, I came outside and could not find my vehicle.
That's
Don't
amazing.
quite get that here. Some of you guys up north, you guys may get that up north. But yes, it was absolutely wonderful.
I'm originally from Canada, but I moved to the States when I was really young, like second, third grade. So I have a ton of memories of it. But one thing I do remember is when we get a big snow and they would plow the parking lots, there would be these huge mountains of snow. And, you know, we're in second grade and we would treat those like forts, you know, on our way to school.
Awesome.
And it was just incredible, you know, just slide down them, and yeah, it was amazing. But we did have a few snows like that where, yeah, your car would get completely buried. And it's so funny here in Kentucky. It's like that kind of snow wouldn't even stop, you know, wouldn't slow us down. But here, like an inch of snow and the whole state shuts down. It's so funny. Yep. It's like, oh my gosh, guys.
Well, and like out there, like when you'd have snow like that, I was a teacher and you'd still have to go in and teach. But none of the students would be in class. They would all be, you know, they would be out skiing and snowboarding because it was like, oh, I'm not going to school. We're out there, you know. So I love it. I think it's absolutely you know, a fun experience. Now I say that, but also to please everybody, if you're here in the local area, if you're in the surrounding areas, please be safe. Be conscious of what you got to do. If you don't have to get out, don't get out on the roads. Some people do struggle driving in this. I was a driver's ed instructor for 3 years. Don't laugh, Chad. And be safe. Know your skills. Know your skill level of driving in this kind of conditions. Be safe out there. Be conscious of others. And if you are out on the road or if you're traveling, and I know, you know, Chad, I get very fatherly with this, but make sure you have the proper equipment that you have. Make sure you have flashlights. Make sure you have blankets and stuff if you're traveling. I actually have our theater instructor here who teaches here for acting out of Louisville. She is traveling back, and I hope and pray that she's safe. But guys, please be careful out there. If you don't have to get out, don't get out. Stay snuggled up. Enjoy that nice cold weather, because you know we want everybody to be safe so that you can come and paint and draw with us in person sometime. So be careful out on the roads.
That was good. You're a real salesman. That was nice. I like that little segue.
You like how it's true, because I was in marketing and sales for many years, so I guess I can't help it, guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's just in that nature, I suppose. Dun, dun, dun.
So here's a go ahead.
Oh no, go. What's that?
I was going to throw out a deep philosophical question for you to
I like
chew on. Yeah. What is your motivation to paint? And furthermore, when you're selecting your next work, how do you decide what you're going to paint next?
Oh boy. I'm going to throw. I'll have to, after I answer mine, I want to throw that back to you because I think that's probably one of the best questions we've asked on this live stream. I feel very fortunate and blessed and lucky, you know, whatever you want to call it. I feel very blessed that I get to paint mostly what I want to paint. And usually it comes to me in a strong sense of an emotional output, if that makes sense. So I did for 3 years, I did a painting series called Animalia, which was large graphite drawings on wood. And it was the concept of, you know, the relationship between humans and animals. And so the idea was that each model had a positive interaction with animals and each model had a piece that was a negative interaction. So it would be like, you know, a female holistically with 2 wolves, but then the negative piece was her wearing the skulls and the pelts of the wolves, right? And for me, that was really just at a time when I was dealing with that duality emotion of where I was at in life. I wasn't a father yet. I wasn't married yet. And so to me, it was kind of like this relationship with nature of myself, right? The good and the bad of Seth at that stage of my life. And so I painted that. I worked on that. And then I progressed to my old Kentucky home, which is currently upstairs in the gallery upstairs here at the Visual Arts Academy and Studio. And part of that was due because of the emotion that I was carrying from my grandmother's passing. And she was very much, she loved Kentucky. She loved fall in Kentucky. And I remember thinking, man, you know, how do I work through this grief, right? And part of it was to get in this painting studio, to get in the studio and paint. And so a lot of that came from missing her and realizing also that the Kentucky I left when I was 17 and went away to college and at the Savannah College of Art and Design, the Kentucky I left at that age was very different than the Kentucky I came back to 10 years later. And so it was a combination of those emotional elements, if that makes sense, Chad. And I worked through that for over 3 years. I'm very fortunate to get to paint what I want to paint. And recently, my wife and I found out that we're going to have our 4th daughter. And the greatest gift that I've been given is that of being a father. It's changed my relationship with everyone. It's changed my relationship with my faith. It's changed everything. And I love being a father. So after I completed the My Old Kentucky Home series, and you and Thomas and a couple of other individuals were challenging me to push my technique further, I realized that I wanted to capture these moments of my daughters at these unique stages in their lives. I felt like it not only is it a gift for me because I get to experience them at 7, at 10, at 2 as a newborn or whatever. I wanted to capture that because I realized time is fleeting so fast. Yeah. And time is going by, and God gave me this ability and this talent to be able to paint, and I want to paint my daughters. Dang it. I want to paint my daughters. I've never really done it. I've done a couple of drawings of them. So I choose what I want to paint based on the emotion that I'm carrying inside because I have to get that out. I have to get that out of me. And I'm a verbal person, Chad. You know this. My wife, if she's watching, she's dying laughing because she's like, he never shuts up. Maybe that's why these live streams are so fun. But I have to get it out. And I feel very honored and lucky that I get to do these of my daughters. And so for right now, at this stage of my life, that emotion is what needs to come out of me is the love for my daughters, for my children. And that's usually what I pick to paint. That's usually what it is what is inside of Seth that has to come out, whether that's the duality from the Animalia series, Angels and Souls, which is the series before that, which was dealing with faith, or if it was My Old Kentucky Home and dealing with the passing of my grandmother and being back in Kentucky, to now showcasing the love and the passion I have for being a father and with my children. And so that's what usually works for me, Chad.
That's beautiful.
You're way too kind.
It's good. It's awesome. Very heartfelt. I love it.
Well, thanks. I guess, it's I wear my heart on my sleeve. If anybody knows me personally, I don't really hide very well, for good and for bad. And, I guess the older I've gotten, Chad, you and I have actually talked about this a little bit in our friendship. And that is, I'm not really ashamed of that. And I'm not ashamed of getting to paint my beautiful daughters. And I'm very honored that I get to do it. And honestly, they love it. And maybe this is a keepsake that they'll enjoy for life. One of our students here, Patricia, she goes, your daughters will cherish this forever. And I think she's right. And I hope that she's right. And Patricia, I thank you so much. If you're watching today, I thank you so much for saying that because I believe you. I think you're 100% accurate on that. How do you pick, Chad? What kind of, how do you, so let me rephrase because I know I just saw that we had a few people join us. Chad asked a brilliant question of how do you decide what to draw, what to paint, or what to work on? I gave him this elaborate, poetic, beautiful answer that was just absolutely stunning. I'm kidding, of course, but I'm going to throw that back at Chad. Chad, how do you decide what you want to work on, what you want to paint, and how you want to go about that process?
I just flip a coin. No, and there's lots of that question for me. So if I had to sum it up, like my whole goal as an artist, and I know this is funny to have like a little catchphrase or a little,
I love it,
a little theme, but the one thing that I center all of my creative activity around is I try to make art that inspires people to contemplate life and God. That's my whole goal as an artist. And so there was many like seasons of my life where I really wrestled with what does it look like to be an artist? Am I an artist? Should I do this? Professionally, should I do this for myself? Should I even do this at all? Through periods where I didn't draw at all, like for chunks of like in years where I just put it aside, and then there'd be other times where it would come back out and I would work on it again. I'm in a season right now where I'm pretty good, like as far as where I'm at with who I am as an artist, and I feel like this is something that I'm supposed to do with my life. So this has been the most content period or season of my life that I've ever experienced. It only took me 48 years to get there. So, and there's no telling the future. I may go through I've been through one midlife crisis. I might go through another. At this point, I know that art is a gift that I've been given. I know a lot of people have different like perspectives and beliefs and everything, but for me, like I do believe it's a divine gift, something that's given to you by God. So it's something I want to steward. It's something I want to use well. And so I also love philosophy. I love theology. I love thinking about life. And so when I come to a picture, I have those things in mind. Now, there are a few pictures I've done that are not that deep, that whatever. For example, I did one earlier last year. It was the drawing of a large hand. It was a large fist, and it originally was going to be kind of a study of a hand. I just wanted to do a hand, and I had never done a drawing in a larger format. It was as large as this one is. It was, I want to say, maybe 3 foot tall by 2 foot wide. It's not huge, but it was the biggest one I've drawn.
It's a substantial piece. I've seen it. It's a substantial piece. It's a very good size.
Yeah, and so it was just hand. It was a fist. I'd taken a picture of my own fist, and I actually know it wasn't my own fist. It was something I found online. It's just a picture of a hand, and I just wanted to as a study. Well, it turned into a piece. So I finished the hand. It looked really good. I put a background on it, and then all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, this is it's like a closed fist, and it like a defiant. And so as I was thinking about it, it's almost like I thought that could be like defiance against the world. It could be defiant against God. It could be defiant against yourself, whatever. So I just put like these kind of storm-like clouds. It's not really clouds. It's just an abstract background. And there wasn't much thought beyond that. And so that's one of those that it's not like deep, it's just a fist that might have some deeper meaning to it, but not really. I did a portrait of my wife that, it's just a portrait of my wife, not really a much more than that. It's something I wanted to do. But on the rest of my stuff, it's usually driven by philosophy and theology. So there's the three kind of styles that I'll do is I'll do realism, which is kind of what I'm working on here. I'll do abstract, which is more geometrical, which maybe in a future live stream I'll work on one of those. And then I'll do sequential art. So I'm working on a graphic novel right now as well. And all of those are driven by philosophy and theology. So, this picture that I'm working on right now, I call it an apocalyptic landscape because it's kind of my vision of what the end of the world would look like. Things are just falling apart. You don't see it right now, but there'll be like storm clouds and mountains falling in on themselves. And in the lower left-hand corner, like tsunami coming through and fire and explosions and all that kind of stuff. And then these little people down at the bottom almost looking overwhelmed by this cataclysmic end of the world type picture. Well, there's a lot of theology and a lot of philosophy behind that. I've got another picture at home that I'm working on that I'll probably eventually bring in here. And that one's the biggest one I've worked on. That one's like 7 foot tall, I think, and about like 4 foot wide. And it's a picture of Adam and Eve, but it's my wife and I as Adam and Eve.
Oh, interesting.
And we're fully clothed, and we're standing on either side of a tree, and there's a snake there. A lot of kind of your typical thoughts or typical like motifs of the Adam and Eve story. But in the background, there'll be like a nice landscape and all that. But there's a lot more lying things that are going on that picture, especially doing it as kind of a self-portrait. It's kind of my message of like identify with Adam and Eve. Also, we have clothes on, so it's after the fall. So we're talking about like the brokenness of the world and There'll be some animals in there. There'll be some dead animals in there. So, talking about death and all those kind of things. So a lot of those themes. With my comic book, there's a lot going on there as far as with philosophy, different worldviews. So a very quick summary of that is it's got two main characters who are both broken characters. They're superheroes. They're the heroes of the story. But they're both broken in significant ways. They're both find out that they're slowly dying. And they're investigating this universe, and there's 12 planets in the universe. Each one represents a different philosophy or worldview. So as they go to these different planets, they'll encounter societies that are built on these philosophies and worldviews. And the whole story is based on like theology. It's a story of this fall and then redemption, and then at the end, a consummation, a finish, a final battle at the very end. Then the abstract work that I do, very philosophically based as well. And the reason why I started doing the abstract work is because I wanted a way to communicate ideas and things that I was wrestling with inside without spending hours and hours and hours trying to do a realistic portrayal of it. So I used geometry as like shapes and forms, lines to represent different ideas. I love the way math looks. I'm not very good at math. I'm very like amateur when it comes to math, but I love the way it looks because I know like behind the symbols, there's kind of truths and profound realities that are being expressed through the symbols. The other day I was flipping through YouTube, and this talk from MIT came up, and it was this mathematician talking about manifolds. And not manifold in your car, but a manifold as in fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth dimensional shapes that aren't even real things. They're mathematical things.
Right.
And it was fascinating to listen to because I didn't understand a word of what was saying. But the reality was like she off the top of her head was just spouting off like references and different equations and different ways things worked. And to see her draw all these like equations on the board, it was just so fascinating. It basically, for me, is a picture of mystery. I'm seeing this this woman who's doing this beautiful thing with her mind and able to express these profound realities in ways I don't understand. But I know that behind them is this reality of truth that is just fascinating to see. And so for that to come through symbols is a lot of the reason why I love abstract art and use geometry in that way, or geometrical forms in that way. So yeah, go ahead.
No, I just kind of, that's awesome. And thank you for sharing all of that. I mean, amazing to hear. But I think it was interesting how you made a comment previously where you were like, sometimes I just create what comes to me, right? Like it's not some profound thing. It's not just this. I just kind of wanted to do this and I did that. And I wanted to make sure that we kind of chimed in and said, you know what, guys, that's a great thing too. Not everything has to be the deepest piece. Not everything has to have this great deep meaning. I love that kind of stuff. I get very much in my own head and things of that nature, but sometimes it's just good to create and just create what the heck you want to create. Right. I loved how Chad said it. If you want to rewatch or go back after we post this up, I think he said it very eloquently, but it's one of those things where it doesn't have to be the most profound stuff. Creating and storytelling and all that stuff, just be creative, get out there, do something. I have a saying that I pounded into my nieces and nephews' heads, which is don't just be a consumer, be a creator, right? Create something. And I think that you'll find it's incredibly fulfilling, even if it's not great, right? Even if it's not what you consider, it's not a work of art. It's not a musical composition. It's not this or that. I think you will find joy in creating. And you had mentioned, correct me if I'm wrong, you said there was times, years, where you weren't creating. Is that accurate, Chad?
Yeah, let me say one thing before I get to that. But sometimes I'll create something based on maybe an artist that inspires me. So when I was doing the portrait of my wife, I was very inspired by John Singer Sargent. I love his portraits. I love his painting style. And so I wanted to challenge myself to do a full-bodied, large portrait, life-size, in pencil. I'd never done anything like that. So
awesome.
it's a personal goal, a personal challenge for me to create something, not necessarily that looks like John Singer Sargent's style, but excuse me,
Motivated and inspired by it.
Yeah. Inspired by it to do something great beyond my ability to do it. And I'm so glad that I did. It's the same with this picture that I'm doing right now. I mentioned it in other live streams. There's an artist named John Martin that I'm very inspired by. I love his paintings. One of them is The Great Day of His Wrath. That's the name of it. And it's very similar in the sense that it's this apocalyptic end of the world scene. Now mine looks very different than his, but I do reference it. I'll look at it and I'll say, what kind of textures was he using in his mountains and the sky and kind of things. And so I'm very much inspired by it. I'm not copying it, but I'm using some of the elements he did for my own painting. And so that's kind of sometimes the inspiration too. You could see an artist that is your favorite artist and you want to do something like that. I did last year, I did a picture, a painting, an abstract painting in acrylic of the crucifixion based on Basquiat's work. Basquiat, if you don't know, is from the 80s. He was a young African-American artist, and he, in my opinion, if he was still alive today, he would have been the modern Picasso.
Absolutely.
Just as far as his ability and his mind, and he's just genius.
Brilliant.
And I say that as one who was very critical of his work. I didn't like his work, but then as I got to learn more about him and see his work, it's just beautiful and fascinating. And for people that don't do abstract, you don't realize how hard or how difficult abstract work can be. A lot of times you'll see people that, just paint, whatever, but to do that in a way in which you're still, when you, this is a tangent, I apologize, but when you're doing,
I love it.
When you're doing abstract work, you're still thinking composition, you're still thinking color theory, you're still thinking story, you're still thinking layer, like you're still thinking about all these same things that you would as a realistic artist. So when I look at Basquiat work, like you'll notice if you look closely, painting you see is like the 5th or 6th painting he's actually done because of all the layering and all the words that he put on. Like I saw some videos and I've read some books on him where he would take references from all over different eras of history, different authors and artists, and incorporate it into his paintings. But it's not this random, graffiti mess. It's actually very intentional. So I was very inspired by that. So a painting of the crucifixion in a similar style. I used acrylic paint and then I used pastel and I drew on it and I scribbled, and very uncharacteristic of my style. And it's one of my favorite paintings. It's something I really love. And it's one I walk away with like, I finally did an abstract painting I'm happy with. I had tried so many abstract paintings and I would get it and I would just trash it and whatever. And so it's long story short, sometimes you'll find a master that you're inspired by and you do things yourself to try to push yourself in that way.
It's so funny you say that because, and you brought up the graffiti, because somebody that was really inspirational for me, which is completely different than what I typically gravitate to, was Keith Haring. Right. Keith Haring's work. I mean, I was not really into that form of kind of free flowing graffiti kind of art, right? If you will. But you're talking about like the design, the composition, but I was always blown away by his ability to just create something out of nothing, right? Like just the free flowing nature of it. But then his compositions were strong and they were well balanced, and it was never boring. I think it would be easy to become pattern based, right? It would be easy to become boring with it or way too heavy. But his work, Keith Haring's work, was just absolutely brilliant and was unlike anything we had seen at the time. And so I say this to say that I think we were talking about where do we create our work from? How do we get motivated? All that kind of stuff. I think it comes from a vast network of things, right? And you can be motivated and encouraged by people of different faiths, different religions, different styles, different techniques. I love seeing people that are motivated from different backgrounds, right? Family histories, legacies, cultural legacy, right? Cultural histories. You think a lot about the Japanese, right? With a lot of their legacy and their history. And, what's the one now that's really popular where broken things are mended and repaired? It's become I know what you're talking about. I can't think of it. Yeah. Gosh. Somebody in the comments tell me what that is, because I'm blanking on it. But that's been around a very, very long time, and now it's resurfaced here in the West, right? And I love that kind of stuff. And I think it's a great way for all of us to communicate our philosophies, our theologies, our thoughts, and our emotions. And to me, Chad, that's what makes art. And it's okay to be influenced by various things, to be motivated to create on your own. And I think it's great. I think it's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, and you were talking about before, like, you don't have to create everything that's like deeply profound and all of that. Like, I have an idea for, it's actually, I took a photograph of our back door. It's a sliding door, and you can see through it sitting from the kitchen table. You can see out into the backyard. And I took a snapshot of it because it was like early morning. The light was coming in. It was so beautiful, so light and airy and almost magical the way it looked. And I took that particular photograph at the time because I was really into Wyeth's work.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Just all of his like paintings of just, you think of like Christie's World and the typical Wyeth painting of that. If you're not familiar with it, it's the girl in the field and she's looking off into the distance, kind of like bent around, looking back at the house off in the distance. And I really got into a lot of his drawings because it was just like simple scenes. Like he would draw or paint like the interior of the room, and it would just be the corner of the room. And I was sitting there thinking, we often are stuck with like, well, what should I paint now? And I thought, man, he just sat in a room. It's like, I'll just draw that corner, or I'll just paint the corner of the room. And still trying to do that. Like the other day, I was sitting in my car waiting for my son was at an appointment, and I had my sketchbook on me, and I'm like, I'm just going to sketch these cars. Now, modern cars to me are super boring. I don't like anything about them. They're not interesting. But that's your role as an artist, is to find something that's boring and inject something into it, make it a story, or just paint the car because it's a car. You don't have to have some profound reason for it. So anyways, all that to say is that when I'm thinking about like future projects, one of the future things that I want to draw is that photograph of that back window in a large format, probably in charcoal, just a realistic, just very beautiful, serene, quiet moment of life. There's nothing beyond that. There's not deeper meaning. It's just a beautiful scene.
Yep. That's it.
And so it could be that, or it could be, a lot of, unfortunately, the reason why I'm not a big fan of contemporary work, sometimes it's just mundane nothingness. And that's okay too. Like some people really get into that. It's not my preference, but other people love that. And that's fine. You could totally do that as well. So, in my mind, like I'm once I finish this one, I want to finish the other larger ones that I've started. But I also in the future have a picture that I want to do. So in my garage, the ceiling to our garage goes up 2 floors. So I have a very tall wall that I can use. And I really want to do a drawing the size of the wall, like have to get up on a ladder and do it, of the rise and fall of angels, and all the like a figure. It'd be basically a figure study, kind of like an old Renaissance style drawing of all of these figures falling, like rising up and falling with a kind of a clouds in the background or scene. But that's all driven by my love for philosophy and theology and Renaissance painting and those kind of things. So all that to say, like we both mentioned, there's, whether it's inspired by great masters, whether it's deep philosophical reason, whether it's just an everyday scene, you just want to paint it. There's really no answer. It's anything. You can find inspiration from anything. And that should be a lesson to all of us, that whenever we feel stuck on something, like a lot of times we all feel that creative block. We just have to remember that whenever you feel that creative block, just draw the corner of the room or draw something. And from that
every day. Yep.
Yeah. From that, you'll get inspired to do maybe bigger works or other projects that you really want to get involved in.
Absolutely.
I did want to, I did answer the one question you asked me about you wanted me to clarify about not drawing or not doing art for periods of time. So that is true. I did wrestle with it. So I went to art school. I graduated from art school in 1998 and had a bit of crisis during that time, spiritual philosophical crisis. My father had passed away. I was very burnt out on art. I was thinking about things I'd never thought about, like philosophically about the meaning of life and those kind of things. So I put art aside for a little while during that time. And also, and once I took up art again, it became very abstract. I started doing a lot of abstract work during that time, which I went to school for sequential art for illustration. So that's what I was used to. Doing abstract art was very different. And so I started kind of a large paper like this, doing these just little abstract drawings on it. And I would put that in my bedroom or on a wall in my house or wherever. And every once in a while, I would just add to it. And then I went through a period of time, a couple of years later, where I didn't know whether I was supposed to like go into ministry or go teach or just live my life doing something completely different. And I really wrestled with what was the place of art in my life.
Right.
And, yeah, I went for seasons of years sometimes where I wouldn't draw. And that paper I kept through all those years. I've had it for 20 plus years. And I would roll it up, put it in my closet, and it would sit there for years. I wouldn't touch it. And then I'd take it back out and I would work on it again, or I would get out, do a comic book drawing or do just a drawing for myself. And then I would put it all away, get it back out again. And that happened for several years, for probably over a decade, where I just put it away for a couple of years, get it back out, put it away, get it back out. But the reason why I knew I was meant to be an artist is because I realized in the midst of all that, I had to get it back out. I would go a couple of years and not do it. But there was just something inside of me. It's like, no, you have to do this. Like I could not get away from it. It would bother me. So I would not do art for, several years, and then I would get restless. I would get anxious. I would get like internally the battle, the wrestling inside. I would just have to give in. I'd be like, no, I have to draw. And so I'm in a place in my life where I've given myself to that. Yes, this is what I need to do. I need to draw. I'm gifted to do that. That's what I need my life for. So to go back to your original question about like what inspires you, how do you figure out what to draw next? I always have that in the back of my mind. I'm using my art to convey a message, not only about myself, but about philosophy, about belief, about faith, about God, about life, all those things. It's all driven from that internal struggle of who I am as a person and who I am as an artist. So,
well, and the reason I wanted you to elaborate on that is because I've had a number of people come into the academy and they've shared similar stories. They've shared similar situations. I've drawn my entire life, or I grew up drawing. It was a passion I had. And, I had a gentleman the other day who's now signed up for a couple classes. And he literally it was so powerful. It was so motivating to me. He's like, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I couldn't stop thinking about it. This is something I've been wanting to do. This is something I've been doing. I kind of focus on this and this. And he goes, and I just, I said, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to take lessons. I'm going to continue to improve. And I've had so many wonderful stories of so many people that have said that same stuff that I wanted them to hear it from you, a master draftsman, right? Yeah, I know that you've been formally trained. I know that you practice and work very diligently at this, but this is something for everyone. Art is for everyone. And there's so many people that have gone 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years of not being a creator, not creating something from inside themselves or getting it out, or even just doing it just to do it, just for the sake of doing it. And we've had so many people come into this academy, come into this studio, and just be excited to create again, right? We've had a ton of people that have come out and said, I've never created. I've never done anything. But there's always this little tickle, right? There's always this little bulb that just flickers for me. And it says, I've got to go and do this. I want to do this. And I've waited 10, 15, 20 years. And now I'm giving in. And now I'm saying, I'm going to learn how to paint. I'm going to learn how to draw. Whether I'm good at it or not, I'm going to fulfill something that has been driving inside of me for years. And I think that's amazing. I think it's absolutely spectacular. And I love seeing people come in and do that. I love seeing people come and get into it. And I think it's important for them to hear people like you and myself and other artists and other craftsmen. We've had moments like that as well. It's never too late, folks. It's never too late. And that's what I think is incredibly exciting. I have a gentleman who's in his late 80s, and he came in and did a session with us, and he says, I haven't had this much fun in 50 years. That's powerful. That's the power of art.
I think friend has started coming to the figure drawing with his son, and he just talks about how he used to draw when he was younger and just hadn't done it in forever. And I keep telling him, like, I'll look at his figure drawing, and I'm like, your drawing is amazing, like your style and the way you use your line and everything, like you have a real gift. And so it's just awesome to see him, you know, and being kind of the same age as me, like picking this back up again is so inspiring. And you know, it's funny, I saw the other day one of the, you know, those Facebook reels, whatever. I saw they did this Facebook reel of this guy in the like up in this like village in the middle of China, and he was like an 80-year-old man, and he was learning how to DJ, how to make electronic music. I was just I loved it. I love seeing it. Like, and he was talking about, like, I don't know, like, I like electronic music. I don't know, like, artists. I do know of, like, Aphex Twin, for example. And he was mentioning Aphex Twin. I'm like, how in the world do you know who that is? Like, it's so crazy. He's like out in the middle of nowhere in the middle of China. And and they showed a video of him in his little hut, and he had like a table and all the electronic, the boards and everything. It was just so awesome. I just loved it that, you know, he was in his 80s and he was like learning how to do something that, you know, he probably wanted to do his whole life. And here he was in his 80s doing it. You know, it's like, it doesn't matter how old you are, just do it. So
it's so incredibly motivating, I think, when you get to experience that and you get to be a part of it. It's absolutely wonderful. Well, guys and gals, we are full steam ahead. I cannot believe I've gotten this much done on this painting. I'm either, you guys are so motivating. I'm so motivated by being able to do this with you guys. I can't believe I've gotten this much paint on this canvas. So thank you all from the bottom of my heart. Thank you guys for letting us do this, to be live with you guys for 2 hours, because this is the most I've gotten to paint on this almost in 6 or 7 days. So I'm pretty happy with how the form's coming out on here. Again, it's not anywhere close to being done yet because I still got to go back in and add the flutes. I got to add that in, and that's going to be a major pain and challenge. But Chad, I'm going to be honest. I'm pretty happy with how this is coming along so far. I like where it's going, and I've got a lot more done today than I anticipated.
You know, I know a joke with you about, you know, seeing you be tortured over there, a tortured artist. But I knew it would be fine. I knew that you would do a great job. I know, I empathize with your feeling of like, oh man, what am I gonna, you know, this is gonna be so hard. What am I gonna do? What if I mess up? I really empathize with that. But I'm not surprised that you were able to get it to a place where, you know, you feel happy with it and you're able to work on it. So I'm extremely excited for you, and I think it's gonna look amazing.
You're so kind, and thank you. Thank you. Let me know, guys. Let me know in the comments. What do you think? What do you think of the painting so far? How's it looking? How's Chad's drawing looking? We love it when you get involved. We love it when you give us your comments. And I'm going to be honest, I was terrified of this, and Chad knows that, and you guys know that, or you guys may have kind of picked that up. But it's so invigorating, Chad, when you do it and you feel good with it, right? Like it's such a high, and I know that sounds horrible, but it is. It is a high where you just get so excited, and you're just like, oh my goodness, this is great. This is why I paint, right? And there's definitely other times when you're like, oh man, this is why I should never.
I was just thinking that. Yeah.
You know, I should never pick up a brush ever. But it's exhilarating when you have those moments when you're like, this is awesome. This is going just how I planned, you know, and it's so much fun when that actually happens, because honestly, it happens less than you want it to.
Yeah, I was just thinking that, like, the opposite, you know, you hit something really good, it's turning out the way you want. The opposite, for me at least, is if something's not turning out, I get obsessed by it. I just sit there and think, oh, I need to fix this. So, for example, I just did a drawing that I actually can't talk a whole lot about because it's a gift for someone, and I don't want to mention it until I give it to them. But it was a drawing. That's all I'm going to say. It was a charcoal drawing, and there was one part that I was like not super happy with, and I had finished it. I even sprayed it with fixative. I'm like, it's done. And then I was like, no, there's one part I just have to touch it up. And I told my wife, I was like, I'm super nervous to touch it because once you put fixative on it, it's very difficult to fix. But on top of that, I'm like, I'm afraid it can be one of those things where I touch it and then I'm like, oh no, now I've got to fix this. And then all of a sudden you're back into it. But I did go back and I did touch it up. It did work out fine. It's what I wanted. Yeah, the opposite of like being excited, like I did it, is that I get like overly fixated. Like I've got to fix this. This is not right. And yeah, I'm willing to almost ruin a drawing just to get it right. I think. So.
Well, I've even had the other extreme of that. I did a in memoriam portrait of a young man for his father, and he didn't know I was doing it, but it was so bad that I could not bring myself to give it to him. Even though I knew that the gentleman would have appreciated it, period, right?
Yeah.
It was such a moment and such a thing for me that I'm kind of ashamed to say it, and I'm kind of embarrassed to admit this to everybody. I abandoned the piece because I was so upset and so frustrated. And it was supposed to be, it was supposed to be a gift out of genuine, heartfelt sadness, and all that. And I missed the mark so terribly bad on it that I still have it in the studio and never gave it to this individual. And I'm ashamed of that because that person would have appreciated it, would have valued it. And my own head got in the way of giving a gift to somebody just because I didn't feel like it was strong enough. And I understand both sides. I've thought about it immensely, right? I've thought deeply about it, and I can see both sides of my conflict. But if I could go back and do it again, I wish I would have given the piece. I wish I would have done it.
Yeah, I totally get it. Yeah, for sure.
Well, guys, thank you guys so much for joining us. We're so excited. Chad and I are getting a ton of work done. If you have questions, give us questions. Ask us how we're working. Ask us technique. We hope that you've got a sketchbook or a canvas in front of you, or that you're creating on your own somewhere in some other time. But we'd love that you're here with us now. Thank you for being a part of this. Let us know what you guys think of the work in the comments and everything else. Oh, we got Louise Sampson. Oh, thank you. Beautiful works. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. And I will apologize. I am horrible at pronouncing names and languages. So if I get something wrong, I think we just talked about how I said Grizel for how many years, I don't know, and when it's Grizai. But thank you, Lewis. Thank you so much. We really appreciate the comments. Glad that you're checking us out. Thanks for being here with us today. Chad, I don't need your comments about how horrible I am at pronouncing everything, okay? I get it. I know I'm horrible.
You know what? I don't have to say anything because what was the thing you said tonight? You said in this like thick Southern accent. I wish I remembered the word. I can't.
Yeah, what was it? Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, it was horrible. It was so bad. I can't remember what it was. If anybody has been watching this whole time, let me know. Remember what it was. It was something to do about snow, I think, wasn't it? Wasn't it something about the weather? I
don't know what it is. But the thing I was just gonna say, like, I don't have to make fun of you at that point.
I know it. It's horrible. But no, we have a lot of fun doing this, guys. Again, we talk about having fun while we paint, while we work. It is a lot of fun. We try to keep it fun and lighthearted with you guys. So thanks for making it fun for us. It's absolutely a wonderful adventure that we get to be on and we get to be a part of, and our students get to be a part of. Again, we're the Visual Arts Academy and Studio out of Louisville, Kentucky, and we are just so excited that we get to share our passion for the visual arts with everybody around the globe. That's the beauty of this technology. That's the beauty of live streams. We're so glad you guys are here. And honestly, I'm just glad that this painting is actually turning out the way that I wanted to. So it's going well. Oh, he said the pronunciation was right. Yes, I nailed it. See, I didn't make a fool of myself, Chad. I got it right. It's awesome. Thank you. I'm so glad I didn't ruin it. I will say this, though. In my defense, I was a teacher for just about 5 years, and I've coached multiple sports. I think names are incredibly important. I think names are so incredibly important. And I am really bad at them, but I think there's a power in getting somebody's name right. I think it's important to get that name right for people, to communicate with them and to let them know that you care enough to get that name accurate, especially names of different languages or of different native tongues and things of that nature. I think it's incredibly important to at least give your best. I think it's incredibly important to do that. And so, Luis, I'm so glad I got that right. I'm so glad. And I'm glad you're joining us. And Chad, you can't make fun of me for getting it wrong. I'm teasing, of course.
Right. Oh, of course. I have my second philosophical question, if you like.
Oh, goodness. Oh, gosh. We went really long on that last one. You think we got enough time? Let's do it.
Let's see, 20 minutes. I think you should be able to answer this. But for you as an artist, what is your biggest challenge, and how, and this will be a New Year's Eve question, which is the worst, but I'm going to go ahead and ask it anyways. What is your biggest challenge, and how do you want to grow as an artist in the coming year? What are some goals that you've set for yourself?
Ooh, boy, that's a really good multifaceted question. I have a few actually, and I think I'll try to be concise in them, but elaborate well enough. The first and foremost one I have is as an instructor. Being able to do the Visual Arts Academy and studio has been a dream of Thomas and I's for over 25 years. Over 25 years. And I really want to grow as an artist in my ability to communicate technique and skills to my students. So as an artist myself, I need to be able to refine what I'm doing, because a lot of things come instinctually, right? Or a lot of things are a combination of the skills that you were taught or that you've achieved over the last 25, 30 years. But as an artist, I want to be able to pay attention so deeply to what I'm doing that I can communicate it to my students. And I want to be a better instructor, a better mentor, a better coach by being able to do that. And so that's goal number one, is pay attention to myself as an artist more deeply and more connected than I ever have. That way I can articulate it back to all the students that are involved in my classes and courses here at the Visual Arts Academy and Studio. And I think that's my number one goal. I have a second goal, Chad, and that is to not be complacent with my current skill set. So I think when you get to the point where you're instructing, you go, okay, great. I think I'm masterful enough at this point that I can instruct others and feel confident in my instruction and the passion and the skills that I'm passing along. But I also don't want to become complacent with that. I don't want to be complacent. I have a wonderful coach. He's actually a professor at the Savannah College of Art and Design. He's been a long-time coach. He was my lacrosse coach. He was my foundations professor, Professor Mike Cummings. He always said complacency kills. And he would say that to me as an athlete, but he also said it to me as an artist. And that's over 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And I still sit on that, Chad. I don't want to be complacent as an artist, not only for myself, but also because I think that means I will be complacent as an instructor. And I don't want to do that. I want to constantly, it goes back, everything's cyclical. Look at this. This is brilliant how this comes back. And Cora Imparo, right? And Cora Imparo, still I am learning. I want to learn as an artist myself, but I want to learn as an instructor. And I want to be able to share that learning down. I want to pass that along to my students. And those are my two main goals for this year, is become more focused and more finite in what I can pass down as an artist to my students, but then also not be complacent in my own skills and my own techniques as an artist for myself also. Those are the two goals I have for 2025.
That's great. That's all.
So since we have a little bit of time left, what about you? What are your thoughts, my friend?
Well, I'm impressed that you were able to answer that so quickly. That was really good. Yeah,
it's a quick-witted brain of mine. I don't know.
No, so so I think this coming year, right before the end of last year, I'd come up with kind of a framework, and I shared this last time, of kind of a weekly, monthly, yearly schedule for drawing.
Yeah, which I think is brilliant, by the way, Chad. I think that plan, if you guys haven't seen that, go back and listen to it, or maybe we'll share it out. But Chad, I think it's brilliant. It really is.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's not like a hard and fast, like, if I don't get this done by this certain time. It's just a guideline. It's just a helpful reminder to keep me creating all the time. So yeah, so basically, if you didn't hear it before, I'll just tell it really easily or really quickly. It's like, I just want to make a drawing every day, one every week, one every month, one every 6 months, and one every year. And what that means is once a day, getting in my sketchbook. Doesn't have to be a finished drawing. It doesn't have to be anything profound, just working on something. Now, for me, that one a day could be working on a bigger piece, and that counts for my one a day. Or it could be a smaller drawing. I just do that day. As far as my weekly drawings, I'm working on my third graphic novel, so I try to do a page a week. Now, I haven't been able to follow that quite closely, but it's a good reminder. When the weekend's coming, I'm trying to get one done by Monday. If I don't, it's fine. I have grace with myself. I can get it done the next week. but it's just a reminder, hey, you're working on this thing, try and get it done by Monday. And then for my monthly drawings, those are kind of mid-sized, still life figure drawings, landscapes. I'm really into charcoal right now, so I want to do a series of those in charcoal. And my 6 month would be this one I'm working on right now. I feel like I can get this done in 6 months. And then the year-long piece would be the larger piece, like that one that I'm working on. I've got a couple abstract ones that I have in my head. Just ones every once in a while I'll just get to. I know it'll take a long time to get to, but just to keep me fresh. So I'm moving from piece to piece to piece, and I can start new things without abandoning current things. That's the problem that I would run into. I'd be working on something and I would think, oh, I've got this new idea, and I'd start something new and I would abandon the thing that I was doing before. But I want to get to a point where I'm still doing fresh new things, but completing work. So, so for this coming year, like trying to follow that pretty closely. So trying to come up with a series of charcoal drawings. I really want to do a series of kind of mid-sized charcoal drawings that I can use for art shows, but that I can also possibly sell or give away as gifts. These larger pieces, I realize in the whole grand scheme of things, these probably aren't no one's gonna come and buy unless, I blow up and become famous or something. I realize this will probably end up in a storage facility at some point in time. I know that. But at the same time, I want to do these larger pieces because I've never done anything like this before. So these are personal to me. So I just think that's the main thing, just that, and then also completing work. I desperately want to finish. I want to be able to look in this studio and look around and see 6, 7, 8 large pieces finished, alongside smaller drawings. But it's these larger ones that I want to get done. It was when I finished the portrait of my wife, which at the time was the biggest one I had done. There was such a sense of accomplishment to have finished a drawing of that size, and to be able to turn around and do this drawing and finish this would be even more amazing. So I really want to get these larger pieces done, so I have kind of an established portfolio, so to speak, and I can eventually start doing shows. Like I would love to do, obviously we've talked about me doing a show here.
Absolutely.
I'd love to do pop-up shows throughout the city. One thing I definitely want to do in the coming year is a lot more plein air drawing, and like do it out in public where people are walking by, so I can like interact with people. I've not had the confidence to do that yet because this past year was the first time I ever did any kind of plein air work. But I have a little more confidence with it now that I feel like I could do it out in public. And if people came by and, chatted with me, I think I would really like that. But I want to put that in my schedule.
You know what's phenomenal about that is here at the Visual Arts Academy, we are in the heart of historic Middletown. And we have this beautiful kind of historic shopping section of the old Main Street. And we have this beautiful fountain out front of our facility here, guys. If you haven't been here, we have 2 floors, 7,200 square feet, full-time gallery on the 2nd floor, multiple studio spaces. But out front, we have this beautiful little park that faces Main Street. And Chad, I think that would be a phenomenal space to do some plein air painting this spring and this summer out of the Visual Arts Academy and studio. And I think people in this community would absolutely love watching you paint and draw on the sidewalks and out there in the air. And honestly, spring and summer here in Kentucky is absolutely gorgeous. So I think that's a brilliant idea, and I'm excited to see that. And maybe we should incorporate that into some of our classes.
Yeah, 100%. There's also a park just down the street too that we could do that in, and there's all kinds of places around the city. And I've been watching. There's an artist. His firm is Devin, and he does these portraits on the street, and he'll just walk up to random people and say, "Hey, I like the look. I draw your portrait." And he's like super famous now. Like his videos go viral, and but he'll do a drawing or a painting, and then he'll interview the person as he's drawing them. He does these videos and posts them, and they're just amazing videos because people that you would never think to talk to, like he just goes up and says, "Hey, can I paint your portrait?" and ask them about their life, like their goals, their dreams, and everything. They're beautiful videos, and I sit there and I think I would love to do something like that. Not exactly what he's doing, but just like do plein air drawing and just be out there. And like, I think a lot of people would really be into that. They come by and see what you're drawing and just, you know, get in a conversation or whatever. I'm not like a super social person, but I think, you know, if I have something I'm doing, it's a lot easier to engage for me in conversation. And I think, you know, I think that would be something that would be really enjoyable to do outside and get people interested, not only in like the work I'm doing, but also this place, and artists could join. And, you know, I think it'd be a really awesome experience.
I think we absolutely have to hold on to that, my friend, and make that happen, because I think that is 100% spot on. And I think you're absolutely right with that. And so that is something that will come to fruition. So if you're excited, come in the local area. If you're around us, come by and visit us, and make sure that you help make that plein air series or session come to reality. I want to give a big shout out and a big thank you to Luis for the comment. Thank you so much. We're so glad you enjoy the energy and the excitement. Obviously, we're very fortunate, very blessed to be able to do this, to be able to paint and share our passion and our love of art with you. And we're so grateful that you're here with us and painting with us and enjoying this. I hope you have a sketchbook out. We hope you have a painting going or something of that magnitude going on. But Luis, thank you so much for joining us. We hope we get to see you again. We are, just so I can give a little plug here, we just announced with our new 8-week sessions, we will be going live, V.A.A.S live, every Saturday from 6 to 8 p.m. So put it on your calendars. Join us in your favorite streaming app, whether it's Facebook Live, Instagram Live, YouTube, or Twitch. We are on Twitch as well. Make sure that you schedule with us, join with us. This is going to be every Saturday moving forward. We're going to have some guest artists. We're going to have hopefully maybe some students join us as well as our other co-founder. And we're just really excited to be able to share this with people that aren't in our local community, right, Chad? We have such a growing community here locally in the academy itself. We thought it was a shame not to share the passion and the love and the skills that we have with everybody everywhere else around the globe. And with the technology of today, it's amazing to me. I mean, I grew up in the 80s and the 90s, where you didn't have this opportunity. The world is so connected and so wonderful. We're glad we get to share it with you guys. We've got about 10 more minutes that we're going to paint here. So Chad, any thoughts or anything like that you want to share out with people before we kind of branch out here in the last 10 minutes?
No, yeah. Well, two things real quick. You were asking about, or you were saying for you as a teacher, the ways that you want to improve.
Oh, yes.
And I feel the same way as far as, having done one round of classes. There's a lot of little things that I think I could have done better or whatever, but I'm excited about the next round to be able to do those things that, to improve. Because you're always improving, not just as an artist, but as an instructor as well. And so there's a lot of different things. I already shared a few things with you, a different approach that I'm going to take to teaching. And I also have in my mind this like romantic vision, which I kind of smile about because my wife gives me a hard time about this, and you and I have talked about it too. But yeah, you get this like realistic thought in your mind, but like one thing that we're going to do differently for my classes is that we're going to actually do the classes here in my little studio space up in the corner of the second floor, and I've actually arranged the tables around this area, and there's just this like romantic feeling of like being this artist and being able to build into younger artists and like being able to like mentor and instruct them and like having that back and forth of these younger artists develop. I'm really looking forward to that. And I love the idea of like being huddled around a workspace where you're actually doing art as an instructor, but also seeing these young artists come in and like working on their things and like inspiring them and them inspiring you. I'm just really looking forward to this next round of classes for that reason. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing I was thinking about when we talked about, building a community and creating art together, one of the things I love seeing is those old photographs of especially those early 19th and 20th century artists, cafe, and you'll see a picture of like, I saw one the other day, it was like, the title of it was like one of the only known photographs of Van Gogh and Gauguin in the same picture. And it was like Van Gogh, Gauguin, and there was like, I can't remember the other artists. I want to say like Cezanne and Monet, whatever. We're all sitting around in this cafe talking, and you just sit there and you think like, man, of course, maybe that was an AI picture made, a fake picture. But either way, I just thought, man, you hear all these stories of the older artists and that they knew each other, like the relationship they had. I was just looking through a book last night. I have this big book on the Dada movement, and it was talking about the different kinds of data. So they had data in New York, they had it in Paris and Zurich and Hanover and all these different places. And these groups of artists would get together, and they knew each other from these different cities as well. But there's all these photographs of them getting together and doing these art events or whatever. They would do like plays, and they would do their art together and all kinds of stuff. And I thought how amazing that is at their time, and how amazing it is to have a place like this where we can do the same thing with these young artists and older artists too. I keep saying young artists, but we have adult artists, older adult artists as well. It's just the community as a whole, regardless of your age. I just love that, being able to connect with others. So,
well, and that's one of the reasons that that's one of the reasons we built out the lounge and reception area and the library here at the Visual Arts Academy and Studio. A huge section of our facility is nothing but a library, a sitting area. We have arcades, comic books, manga books. We've got figurines. We've got all these different components because of exactly what you just said, right? Being a part of a community is very helpful. That we have some outgoing individuals. We've got some very introverted individuals. We've got artists of all skill levels here. And it's so exciting. You don't know if the next movement isn't going to happen out of V.A.A.S. We don't know that. There could be a group of artists that show up every day or every week and are taking some things. They may create the next great art movement out of here. And I just got chills because I truly believe that. I truly believe that that can happen. And having a space like this, and I know Thomas, our other co-founder, my best friend, my brother, I know that Michelle and Zach, our other leadership team members and owners, we know how important it is to be surrounded by other artists and how much it is to be involved. And so that's why we've built this space. It's okay if you're at home and working on your own. That's why we're doing these live sessions. I hope you're in your comfy jammies. I hope you're all cuddled up and I've got you a coffee and a sketchbook and a croissant or whatever it is. I hope that you're creating, but I also encourage you to be part of an artistic community. It's so important. It's so powerful. We are pack artists and creators, and you never know if you're going to be a part of that next big movement. And a lot of times it comes from these conversations. It comes from these discussions. It comes from these debates back and forth, and you're motivated and inspired and excited. And that's what this is, right, Chad? That's what this place is. And that's why we're so honored to be here and to be able to do this with you guys. And I know I get so passionate. I know I get carried away, and sometimes it's laughable. But I promise, guys, this is what's so exciting, and this is why we love doing what we're doing. And Luis, thank you so much for subscribing. We can't wait to see you next Saturday as well.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. It's so funny. We talked about this before. I'm up on the second floor, and I can hear you through the hallway, through the stairwell of your excitement, which is so amazing. No, I love it. I love it. It's so awesome to hear that. It's so refreshing because, I often joke, I can hear my own monotone voice compared to yours. It's so awesome because it excites me. It's to hear your passion builds my passion. That's exactly how community is. You inspire each other, you push each other to get better. So I love it. It's awesome.
It's funny. I literally I just got a text message from my wife, and the first thing that went through my mind, Chad, was she's going to be like, Seth, calm down. It's too much. That's the first thing. But I am glad that I'm passionate about this. This is a huge event in my personal life, and I think it's a huge opportunity for a lot of other artists to be a part of this. And it is a dream come true. It absolutely 1000% is a dream come true. I know that having your studio space and being able to coach and mentor and be a master artist with true proteges, right? With true students. I know that that's something that has been a dream of yours as well. This is a dream of Thomas's. And I know I get excited. And if you don't know me, it may come across as something that, is a little whatever, but I promise you, we are so fortunate to have a community here in just these few short 3 to 4 months that is exhilarating by all members, right? And we have some members that have taken a 2-hour exploration session. We have members that have signed up for multiple classes, every week, every month. And it's just so wonderful. And we're so grateful for it, guys. Chad and I are going to continue to work on these paintings. I can't believe this progress. I'm loving what I'm working on. Chad, I know you've got a lot of progress as well. Again, tune in every Saturday, 6 to 8 from now on. Chad and I are going to make this into our schedules as part of our instruction and our teaching. So go ahead and subscribe, like, share, tell your friends and family members all about it. We can't wait for you guys to come and paint and join with us again. We love it. And Luis, thank you so much. I think my phone just died. So my phone was the secondary camera. Chad, we've been going for 2 hours, and I think the phone died. I'm so sorry about that, Luis. But we'll get that fixed up. We're going to go ahead and wrap up for the day. Chad, I'll let you close this out today. Any last thoughts or comments? Luis, I'm sorry the camera went off, but I'll have an updated version of this painting for you soon next week. But Chad, why don't you give us your closing thoughts and wrap us up for the day?
Well, I just want to say, just like you said, Seth, we're so grateful for everyone that has subscribed, watched the video, made comments. It's really what the thing that drives us to do this is interacting with other people. We're so happy that you're here and interacting with us, and we look forward to doing it every Saturday. And I would say on behalf of Seth, myself, and Boss, we thank you all. Have a great night, and we look forward to seeing you all next Saturday.